Once fashion was considered fleeting, stitched for a season and forgotten the next. Today, those same garments hang beneath museum lights, framed in glass, revered like paintings. How did we get here? How did fashion, once dismissed as vanity, became one of the most powerful storytelling mediums inside museums around the world? This is the story of how fashion became art. For centuries, museums have displayed paintings, sculpture, and architecture. Fashion, by contrast, was seen as just decoration, beautiful but temporary. The shift began in 1960 at London's Victoria and Albert Museum, a lady of fashion, showcasing the wardrobe of Heather Furbank, marked the moment when fashion first crossed from the wardrobe to the museum wall. Over the next decade, London continued to explore fashion's artistic value with shows like Fashion and Anthology in 1971 and The Fabric of Pop in 1974. Each exhibition drawing a little closer to the idea that fashion was more than fabric. But it wasn't until 1983 when the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York hosted Yves Saint Laurent. That was when the fashion's place in the art world was truly secured. For the first time, a living designer was given a retrospective, and the line between couture and culture blurred forever.
We know that Yves Saint Laurent was tremendously interested in art. You were both collectors, and he brought art into fashion. How did he do that?
Art always have a great influence on his work, always. And the first dress, you can notice the first one is a Mondrian. And after that, he has been influenced by many other masters, such as Picasso and Matisse and Van Gogh, of course, and many others. Yves Saint Laurent is one of the most famous colorists in the century. Absolutely.
What is fashion, if not sculpture in motion? Every drape and stitch is an act of storytelling. A dress can hold the mood of a decade and the silence of a woman who was never heard. When placed in a museum, a garment transforms. It's no longer just clothes that are worn, it's witnessed. The folds in the fabric become memory. We begin to look for the meaning behind the design, rather than just considering it as pieces of fabrics that are stitched together. Fashion exhibitions let us see what we often overlook, that clothing is both armor and language. The 21st century witnessed an explosion in fashion exhibitions, and the audiences followed. In 2011, the Met presented Alexander McQueen Savage Beauty. It was unlike anything before, theatrical, emotional, and raw. Over 660,000 people came to witness it, many waiting for hours. It proved that fashion could move people the same way a painting or a sculpture could. Soon after came Christian Dior, designer of dreams, heavenly bodies, fashion, and the Catholic imagination, and Thierry Mugler, couteurism, Each exhibition grew more immersive, using sound, light, film, and architecture to turn fashion into an experience for the masses. At the Met, Heavenly Bodies became the most visited exhibition in its history. Over 1.6 million visitors. Fashion was no longer a niche interest, it was the main event.
The exhibition is called Heavenly Bodies, Fashion in the Catholic Imagination. It's the largest exhibition that the Costume Institute has undertaken. It's in two sites, the Met Fifth Avenue and the Met Cloisters. The exhibition is about forging relationships between fashion and specific religious artworks within the Metropolitan Museum of Art. The exhibition, in a way, has been planned almost like a procession. When you enter the Met Fifth Avenue, you're almost immediately confronted with the start of the exhibition, which begins in the Byzantine galleries. The Byzantine galleries focus on designers who've been inspired by sacred spaces, the interiors of Byzantine churches. We have Gianni Versace's last collection in 1997. One of the dresses you see was directly inspired by a crucifix that belongs to the Metropolitan Museum of Art.
But the question is, what draws millions of people to see a dress behind a glass? Maybe because fashion speaks to people. It's personal, everyone wears it, but it's political. It shapes how we are seen and who we can be. Every exhibition tells a larger story. McQueen spoke of death and beauty, Dior of femininity and fantasy, Mugler of power and futurism. Through these garments, we read history differently, not through battles or treaties, but through fabric, seams, and skin. Modern fashion exhibitions aren't just quiet halls, they are theaters. They immerse us in a designer's world. Soundscapes pulse through the walls, mannequins rotate, and light flickers like breath. Curators and exhibition designers work together to turn fashion into an experience, just like art, a choreography of clothes and emotion. The visitor doesn't just look, they feel, and that's what makes these shows unforgettable. But with the fame comes some controversies. Some critics argue that fashion exhibitions are turning museums into catwalks. They reckon that luxury brands use these shows as marketing rather than art. Yet perhaps that's the paradox that defines fashion itself. It has always lived beyond art and commerce, between inspiration and desire. Museums too are learning to navigate that tension between cultural heritage and cultural hype. Beyond glamour, there's something deeply emotional about seeing clothing preserved. Each stitch, each worn edge reminds us that someone once touched this fabric. It belonged to a moment, a person, a life. In a museum, these garments become witnesses to history, gender, art, and emotion. They tell us that beauty can be serious and that what we wear can say everything we cannot. Fashion, in this sense, isn't about just appearance, it's about memory and emotion. The rise of fashion exhibitions tells us a lot about ourselves, about how we now see creativity and meaning. A dress on a mannequin can make us cry. A pair of shoes can remind us of an era. A collection can define a culture. fashion has always been about transformation, and perhaps its greatest transformation is that it came from the runway to the museum, from being considered as trivial and turning into timeless. Because in the end, fashion isn't just about what we wear, it's about what we feel. Love to know which aspect of this video you enjoyed the most, and if you'd like me to do a deep dive into some of the fashion exhibitions that shaped history.